Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindy Chavez here. Today is Wednesday, November the 14th, 2018. It is 8 a.m. New York time. That's 5 a.m. Los Angeles time. 1 p.m. London time. And adding in one more city, Sydney time would be 12 midnight. So if you're up and listening on at 12 midnight on Sydney time in Australia, we really appreciate you being here. And this is, of course, your Daily Dose of Happy for this Wednesday. And we are pleased and proud to welcome back our newly married lady, Cindy Chavez, who's still flying on cloud nine after being married on Sunday. As sort of the next step in her, what is it, 7 years you and Scott have been together? I mean, that's really fabulous. Yes. 7 years, and you guys are you finally just tied the knot, and now you have this permanent grin pasted on your face.
This is it, yeah.
It's a good thing.
I thought I had a permanent grin already, but I think it's a little bit bigger now.
Well, that could be. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, adding to the grin is a good idea, I think. You know. And we are also grinning, kind of sadly but happily, because we are about to conclude the book "Feeling Is the Secret" by Neville Goddard. We're down to chapter 4, which we were looking at this morning and realized it's a pretty short chapter. But knowing us, we always find ways to milk it, so it may take the entire show to get through it. You never know.
Right? Oh my goodness. And then we need to decide where we're going next.
That's true. In fact, I was thinking, there are Neville fans in the Facebook group that we live stream to, the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group. And I'm wondering if there's anybody tuning in currently or maybe checking out the video later who might like to make a suggestion about what book for us to pursue next. So if you have a suggestion, if you have a thought about where you'd like us to go, I mean, they're good books. I mean, that's the one thing I've learned. They've got good stuff in them. So we're glad to hear your suggestions, ideas. Now let's see. This is our third book, right? We've done two other books beside this one, I think.
Right, correct. This is the third one. We've done Feeling Is the Secret is the one we're doing now.
Right.
And we've also done Awakened Imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe we did The Power of Awareness.
I think we did Out of This World, didn't we?
Oh, you're correct.
Yeah. In fact, it was so far out of this world, we forgot.
I'm like, wait. I get them confused. They're all good, though.
They are all good.
I'm watching you, and I can't see your whole face.
Well, that's because I'm cut off, probably. I should probably check my little viewer here and see. Oh, yes, you're right. I am cut off. Okay. Let's get down. We got to see the top of my head, right? Okay, there we go. Hello. So, okay.
Hello, there you are.
So, anything new happening in the last 24 hours? I mean, has the smile gotten bigger? I mean,
I was actually trying to think. I was like, because so many little things have happened in the past 3 or 4 days that really seemed like it was so funny when you asked me. So, did your wedding have any glitches?
Yes,
because everyone has some kind of glitch, and I said no. No, there wasn't any. And what was funny is we started talking about that later because we had been talking about how do we do this? This is amazing. Right. We had called the guy that does our yard, but everything was being done within 48 hours. It was like we just amazingly just pulled everything together, and we called him and asked him if he could come by, if there's any chance, because usually it's a week ahead of time a notice, right?
Right.
And he said he didn't think he could, but that he would try to get by, Sunday or Monday or something like that. And I think we said, okay, well, we had some people coming over to the house on Sunday, so we know it's a quick notice. We just thought we would ask. And he said that he had some problems with one of his machines or something, and that if I get it fixed, I'll get there as soon as I can. It's like it could be really soon. I'll get there as soon as I can.
Yeah. So
we kind of picked it all up ourselves. Didn't worry about it too much. And I never thought about this because I was busy getting myself ready for the ceremony. But he said it did enter his mind once or twice that he could arrive here and start doing the yard in the middle of the ceremony, right? The machines, But that did not happen. And then once we were all finished, we were going to take the kids to brunch, and we opened the door to go out to get everybody in the cars. And there he was pulling up, maybe 15 minutes after we had wrapped up the ceremony. So
that's funny.
Because that really would have been something to be in the middle of.
Yeah, right.
All of a sudden, hear all the yard machines come on.
That would make a great video, right? Somebody's taking a video of the ceremony. Do you receive this one?
Exactly. But no, it was really great. It was really. So.
Oh, that's funny. Well, actually, I think that's what makes weddings fun. Actually, when things go wrong, I don't remember if I told you on or off the show yesterday, but we had a fun event with our wedding because Louise arrived at the venue in a limousine that did not have a rear gear. The reverse gear didn't work. And why they sent a car out with a reverse gear that didn't work, I still can't tell you to this day. They didn't give us a satisfactory answer on that. But the bottom line is that the driver got to a part of the parking lot at the place we were at and couldn't turn around. And so Louise called my brother, who was also my best man, and Mark went around and took all the men away from the venue. And I'm saying, what the hell is going on? All the men are leaving. Because my brother also forgot to mention why he was taking them away. So I'm staying there befuddled, like, what's going on here?
I told Scott that story because it was so funny that you said, my brother looked at me and said, don't worry, nothing's wrong. And he took all the groomsmen and they left.
I love my brother. I love my brother dearly, but he has this tendency to be a little bit... I don't know what the word is. He tends to forget little details about informing other people. So he remembered to inform me. He just forgot to inform me why. He left that little piece out. Or like during the ceremony, we had a microphone so that people could hear us while we're interacting with the judge, and he forgot to hold up the microphone so that everybody could hear us. So he's just holding the microphone at his side throughout the entire ceremony. Just a little glitch. Oh, it was fun.
The part about that story is when you first told that story and you said, well, Louise arrived in a limousine to the wedding and the limousine did not have reverse. And I was like, there's no turning back, Louise.
That's right. That's right. Yes. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. That's what that adds up to, isn't it? There's no turning back. Not that I think that would have been a problem, because Louise had told me in the months leading up to the day, that she was going to make it very clear to everyone in the audience that, yes, she took this man. And when it came to that part, she turned to the audience and said it really loudly, yes, I do.
That's awesome. I remember sort of making sure that I was really enunciating clearly and, no mumbled I do, right? Mm-hmm. I do, yes. But I don't know that I think I looked at him. I don't think... I love it.
I think it was just her way of saying, sorry girls, he's mine, and he's off limits now, forget it.
Yes, to make sure that no one is doubting my sincerity here. I am all in. Well, it's a wonderful thing, and I'm appreciative that so many people are celebrating with me. So that's
yes. Well, you have something great to celebrate. That's a fabulous thing. And I'm wondering, what happens when you get married when you're relatively early in a relationship, maybe, I don't know, a year or less or something like that. There's always a high, right? I wonder if there's more of a high when you've been in a relationship for 10 years or for 7 years and get married. I mean, does it last longer? I'm wondering. That combined with the fact that you're a law of attraction coach, so you understand how valuable it is to milk this stuff, to play it out, to get excited and keep the excitement going.
Right, exactly. I don't know. That's a really good question. I always have thoughts about people that maybe get married without ever, like right away. So all the little things about getting to know each other, they haven't done yet.
Yeah.
And I think,
yeah.
I realize that everybody has their own personal desires and beliefs and ways that they think that things should go or are best to go for them. But I really like the way we did this.
I hear you. I mean, we actually Louise and I took a little over a year. So, and that was more me than her, believe it or not. because she was, after a few months, she was ready. Like, okay, let's name the day. And I'm thinking, hey, give me till Christmas. I need some time on this.
Well, we got engaged, within the first probably 6 months. So it's been a very long engagement.
I guess so.
When we've both already raised our families, and there wasn't any rush to start a family or anything like that. So.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
I think
but
for me, I think
perfect.
I was just overcoming like years and years of reservations about marriage. It had nothing to do with Louise.
Right.
It had to do with me and my own preconceptions. Because, there was a time in my life I remember saying, I'm not ever going to get married because I've seen what happens with too many marriages. Like, I don't want to go through all that. So many people suffering pains and divorce and, all this other stuff. And, of course, a lot of it came off of television, which is always a bad guide. But,
Well, one of the things that it's going to sound like any other kind of revelation. When you have your own revelation about something and it's like a big aha moment, then you try to tell someone else and they're, yeah, well,
nonplussed, right?
Yeah. So, and I will say that that's how it usually is when we have a big, revelation about something. But when I was in school to be a relationship coach, one of the things that I really had this aha about was that, and it sounds so silly now, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but it was like the idea that you get to design your relationship the way you want it. The two of you that are entering into any kind of relationship, you get to design it. People will say things like, well, marriage is blah, 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 fill in the blank, or, whatever. And it's like, well, it's whatever you decide you want it to be. You get to design it exactly how you want. It's like building a house to your own spec. You get to design it. You don't have to just take what's there. You get to design it. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. And for me, it was very wonderful and freeing. It's like, oh my goodness. And I think that's the thing that I did. Of course, later in life, there's a lot more wisdom. But going into a new relationship and recognizing from the very beginning that this isn't something that's just going to like unfold without my input. I get to, right? We both get to decide what works for us. What are our boundaries? How do we make this work? What do we want it to be like? And I think that makes all the difference. So, and it's one of the things that I always want to make sure I tell clients that I'm coaching around relationship, because a lot of times there's this preconceived idea. I think that, well, this is how, I had someone tell me one time, well, I really want a relationship. And I understand that relationships are, even good relationships are always going to have more bad days than good days. But and I said, whoa, let's stop right there. That's not true in my experience. I wouldn't be in a relationship that was having more bad days than good days if it's something that could be corrected, right? It's like, no, not at all. So we get to design it. And I think that's an important thing to remember, especially for a conscious creator.
And I didn't even know what a conscious creator was at that point. I was years away from being exposed to law of attraction theory. So, I was literally in the case of the blind leading the blind. But I did know this much. I knew on an intuitive level, and Louise and I had talked about it too, exactly what you're talking about, that you can design your own relationship. We actually consciously discussed that point. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was taking so long to decide to ask her. Because, like I said, I'd gone through all of these years thinking I didn't want to get married because I'd seen all of what I saw as the pitfalls of marriage. And now all of a sudden I was faced with the idea, well, I can create a marriage. Well, I hadn't given it any prior thought. I had no background to fall on. So I had to reinvent in my own mind what I wanted my relationship to look like.
Right. Exactly.
And that took some time. It took me. Louise had, I think, because of her training as a therapist, she had been through that thought process. That's one of the things you have to do, right? When you become a coach or a therapist, is figure that stuff out. I'd never done that, so I think I kind of had it figured out within like the first 4 or 5 months. But even then, I just wanted to sit there and kind of test it for a bit because I had no intention of getting married twice. Once was enough. And because of that, I wanted to make sure I was getting it right. So even though I had it figured out, I wanted to spend the next few months kind of, working it through and say, yes, do I really feel like this is true? Yes. Do I feel like that's true? Yes. And just, play out the whole piece of it. And plus just see how it went. Because, of course, we were still living with each other during that time anyway, so it was like we were already married. I wanted to see what it felt like. Was this working the way I thought it was going to work? And it was. So
yeah, so you got it right. That's
I got
awesome.
it right, yeah. Well, we got it right.
When I was, my parents divorced when I was 6. But I remember, and it's funny thinking about this, they had a very tenuous relationship, a lot of arguing and strife and stress. And, in the last couple of years of their marriage, which I guess a lot of people that become divorced can say, yeah, the last year or so of our marriage was stressful. But I was a small child, and I remember, like in kindergarten, there was a little boy that had a crush on me. And he told me he was going to marry me.
Oh, really?
I was like 5, right? And I said, I'm not getting married.
Yeah.
I'm never going to marry. And I was 5 years old, and I was declaring, I'm never getting married. Why? Well, because I was watching a marriage that wasn't really working at the time.
Right.
And so, we make those decisions. Nope, not going to do that. And that's because we are watching a certain thing. We think this is what that is, and that's not for me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right.
Say, I'm going to do it differently. So.
Exactly right.
Well, I'm looking at the Neville book that we definitely are finishing up today. If we can't finish this one up today, I'm going to because it's the shortest chapter. But, however, it's so short that while you were setting up, I did sort of a little preview. I read a few sentences and I said, oh boy, because I will put the disclaimer here about Neville for those listeners that may not be familiar with Neville. I asked someone yesterday, are you familiar with Neville Goddard? Because they were about a year into their law of attraction practice. And they told me, well, I know the name, but I'm not really familiar with, their stuff. So I said, okay. But Neville Goddard uses a lot of scripture from the Christian Bible, as well as the Jewish Bible, and sometimes he quotes other esoteric texts like Hermes or the Emerald Tablet. But he uses these scriptures in a way that I think Walt and I would agree, right, Walt, that a lot of his defining moments in his scripture versing there is, a lot of people would say that sounds like heresy. If there's somebody that believes the Bible very literally. He believes it in a way that's not literal at all. He gets very esoteric with it. And I think that some people would say, we can't believe that way if there's somebody who's been taught the Bible a certain way. So today, we're really going to hear that today in this chapter. So we've been, it's a small book anyway. Feeling is the secret. And we've gone through the 3 chapters prior, talking about sleep and talking about prayer and how to use those 2 things to consciously create the future that we're creating. So in this one, it's called Spirit-Feeling is the chapter title.
Interesting title, too. Spirit-Feeling, because it's in some way connecting them, saying they're equivalent or part of the same thing. And that's, again, not the way we normally think about stuff, regardless of whether you're talking about a religious viewpoint, just in general. Spirit feeling, we don't necessarily associate the two, but he's very clearly drawing a connection. And as a follower of Abraham, I can certainly definitely see the connection between the two. But before I got involved in law of attraction teaching, I would have said, well, okay, connection between spirit and feeling, what do you mean? Wouldn't have had it.
Yeah, well, and yesterday, when we were reading about prayer, and he was making the point that successful prayer he says he likened it to assuming the feeling of the witch. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you've been successful in your prayer, you will have assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
Right.
And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's interesting, because I think that's the first chapter where he's really, I mean, the chapter actually being called prayer. So he's going there.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked, of course, yesterday about the idea of prayer and meditation, different words that we give for what we're doing that are very much the same. So we'll start and see where we go. He says, he starts right off with quoting from the Jewish Bible. He says, "Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord of hosts," from Zechariah. And then he explains, "Get into the spirit of the state desired by assuming the feeling that would be yours were you already the one you want to be." Now, that's kind of interesting the way he uses spirit there, right? Because it's like we talk about spirit in that way. We're saying, oh, you're in the Christmas spirit. Sometimes people will say it's like meaning that you're in a celebratory mode, or you're ready for that particular holiday, or we talk about isn't there the word spirit? You like when my boys were in high school, like Spirit Day, or like pep rally, right? Okay.
Yep. Or a spirited discussion. A spirited discussion is a lively and alive and excited and enthusiastic discussion.
Right. Okay. So I think that's interesting to use the word that way, because I don't always hear it that way, but now thinking about it, it is pretty common even today.
Yeah, sure.
So get into the spirit of the state desired, by assuming the feeling that would be yours were you already the one you want to be. As you capture the feeling of the state sought, you are relieved of all effort to make it so, for it's already so.
He's describing a shortcut. That's what he's doing. We
talked yesterday about efforting, right? And he was saying, if you start trying to make this happen by effort, it's not going to happen. And so he says, as you capture the feeling of the state sought, you are relieved of all effort to make it so, for it is already so. There is a definite feeling associated with every idea in the mind of man. Capture the feeling associated with your realized wish by assuming the feeling that would be yours were you already in possession of the thing you desire, and your wish will objectify itself. So this is that whole idea that we do not have to figure out the hows.
Right. And not only, I love what well, actually, it's more than that. He's not only do we not have to figure out the hows, he even said it in the previous, where was it? You are relieved of all effort to make it so, for it is already so. There is a definite feeling associated with every idea in the mind of man. Well, what he's really saying there is, if you try to piece it together, you are basically trying to piece together an idea. Whereas if you just have the idea, you focus on the idea as a whole, not only are you not trying to piece it together, but it's easier because you already know what that idea is. You've already been there. You've experienced that before. You've lived in that place. And so you don't have to invent it all. You don't have to make it into something by taking the tattered pieces of something else and gluing them all together. It's all just right there, and it's easy to tap into. And I think it's a brilliant idea, because certainly I have been one who has tried to piece together a feeling, to piece together an event, because I wasn't quite sure. I don't know what it's like to have $1 million. I don't know what it's like to have a winning relationship. I don't know what it's like to, whatever it is. Well, the first thing that I think many of us try to do is piece it together. What would it be like if I were to glue these pieces together? What would it feel like? Whereas he's saying, no, don't go there. Just go to feelings that you already know. Go to thoughts you already know. It's like, yeah, okay, makes more sense. It's easier for sure.
Yeah, and I love the reminder that feelings. We do know feelings.
Yes,
actual feelings, not emotions, but feelings. I know what it feels like to put my hands on the sides of the ladder and my feet on the rungs of the ladder and climb up. Like, I know that feeling. My hands on the desk, my body in the chair, my feet on the floor. I mean, those are feelings, and I think that's a great way to start tapping into. Put yourself in your body first and feel, yeah, I'm here and this thing is happening. And I love the way yesterday he used the idea of a play, and then we use the idea of a movie, because I mean, in my life anyway, I probably watch more movies than I watch plays.
Yes.
But but that idea that there's a scene And we may, scene 3 may end with chaos going on, and the viewer is thinking, oh no, are they going to make it? What's going to happen? Are they going to get their wish? Right? Scene 4 happens, and oh look, everyone's celebrating. Look, they did. They got what they wanted. It happened. It unfolded. We don't know how.
Yeah, like a huge gap.
All of a sudden, we get, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Is we're just going to the end. We're just going right to the end, to the happy end, going right to the goal, the wish fulfilled, and tapping into that. It's a lot easier than.
Oh yeah, a whole lot easier. And plus, I think it's important to remember what we talked about in previous episodes with this book, how Neville uses the word feeling. I think you're the one who first brought it up, that there are two ways to look at the word. One is feeling associated with an emotion. The other is feeling associated with simply a touch, a sense, sensing it. And that the feeling of it can include all the 5 senses. So seeing it, hearing it, touching it, smelling it, tasting it, they're all involved in feeling it and experiencing it. So in that sense, feeling means experience. So look at it that way. Now spirit dash feeling, replace the word feeling with experience. Spirit dash experience. In other words, experiencing as spirit and the spirit of we mentioned a few minutes ago, like Spirit Week or spirited discussion. So spirit in terms of being enthusiastic and turned on and so forth. Well, now all of a sudden, spirit dash feeling becomes a turned on, excited experience. And that takes on a whole new picture, Takes on a whole new feel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah. That's great.
And that's something.
I love that.
Yeah, I was noticing that while you were describing that if you get on the Neville decoder ring and you decode the words, it comes out with, whoa, this is a very different from what you originally thought when you first read it.
Well, I tell you that a little part of the story is that about the wedding that works right into this, because it has to do with the vignette that I was running for the past 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
I told you that earlier in the year, I had kind of picked this date. I just said one day because of the number 1111 is very auspicious. And in numerology, 2018 reduces to the number 11 as well. So 11, 11, 11. And so at the beginning of the year, I said, we should get married on 11/11, on November 11th of 2018. That would be a great date to get married. And so we looked it up. We said, oh, it's on a Sunday. We should do that. That was about it. That was spoken of it. We didn't really, we didn't start planning or anything. We didn't talk about it too much. Then when we got closer to the date, when we were like a month from the date, I was thinking to myself, my critical part of my brain wanted to say, this is not going to happen. We haven't even planned a single thing. Like, this is probably not going to. And as soon as that thought would come in, oh, this isn't going to happen, I would say, yes, it is. It is if we want it to. Mm-hmm. But I never pushed. I never kept bringing it up and, saying, we need to start planning. None of that. I just started making a vignette. And I'll tell you what the vignette was.
Okay.
It was, I could feel a ring on my finger.
Oh, my.
And we were toasting with a glass of wine. Mazel tov.
Nice.
I could smell the wine. I could feel what the glass felt like on my hand. I could hear the little tinkle of the clink. And that's all.
That's all it needed to be. It. Yeah.
There's a place where Neville says, I'm not sure if it was in this book or the last one, which was Out of This World. Literally, that's the title, Out of This World. It sounds like I'm saying, wow, the last book we did was Out of This World.
Well, in some ways they are, but I understand what you mean.
Yeah. But he talked about a word or a phrase. Like, I think he used the word thank you. Mm-hmm. Like, he was imagining someone shaking your hand, congratulating you about your new job or something, and he was just like, thank you. And he said, you may want to fall asleep just saying that word. So that's what I was doing. Mm-hmm. It was like, I can't remember if the toast was Mazel Tov or L'chaim. It was maybe both, one of those. But it was just a toast. But I really could feel, and I didn't think about it until this morning when I woke up. I could feel the ring on my finger, and I went, oh my goodness, yay! That was it. So I watched this unfold in the period of 3 weeks. And I say 3 weeks, but it was just me doing this vignette. And literally Thursday before the Sunday that we got married, Scott said to me, "Why don't you go back in the house and get your birth certificate?" when we were leaving for the office. And so, I mean, this came together so easy. It all just unfolded. There was no pressure. We weren't stressed. We were having so much fun. We kept saying, wow, we are rock stars. This is just everything's falling into place. So yeah, it can be a very small, but allow yourself to tap into those actual feelings, like Walt said, the bodily feelings, the sensations, smells, tastes, feelings, things with your hands, feeling your feet on the floor, whatever you can. It doesn't have to be emotion. I think emotion's harder to drum up when you're not really feeling it.
Yeah, well,
Right?
that's why I like the spirit side of it, because spirit can be emotion, but it can also just be spirited and excited, just really alive and aware and part of it, which doesn't necessarily have a definite emotion associated with it. It's sort of generally emotional, I guess, but it's not something we specifically say, "Oh, I'm feeling joyful in the middle of that. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling, very, very." Caring. I mean, I don't know why I'm having trouble reaching for positive emotion words today, but it's not like there's a specific emotion. It's just like I'm just turned on. I'm excited. Like, whoa! I can wait. I can hardly wait to find out what's going to happen next. And when you look at it that way, then getting into the spirit of it is all about getting into the excitement level of it, and that's what you did. I mean, I could hear it in your voice. You're describing the ring on your finger, and just the way you said it was just full of excitement. Now, you may have been hard pressed to say what the emotion was, but the excitement level was undeniable.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because now establishing a wider emotional vocabulary is really useful. Like actually learning new words besides just happy, sad, mad, scared. Right? Those are the 4 main emotions.
Mm-hmm.
When we can really start to broaden that vocabulary, it's useful to us because we can. But there are times when it's hard, like you said, to put a name on what is that feeling. But you're right. Getting into the spirit of the state,
Yes,
is it. And we know from the things that we described, like being in high school and going to a spirit day pep rally.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways for us to decide, I'm going to get into the spirit of this.
That's right.
And you were talking about earlier in the year when you were doing mirror work, when you were starting to do mirror work. I think like maybe less than 30 days in, you had made this comment that, the thing I'm working on now is to, whenever I'm consciously tapping into a certain feeling, to be able to, at will, expand it.
Yes.
And make that feeling bigger. And that reminds me of this. It's like getting into the spirit is really, expanding that feeling.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because you're right. That was when I was saying that. That was a pretty big goal. It was not the primary goal that I had when I was doing the mirror exercises, because the primary goal was what you had told me Jack Canfield had used it for, which was to get rid of the negative chatter in the head that was quite annoying, and it did. It did get rid of that. But even though I didn't keep doing the mirror exercises consistently after the first 45 days or so, I have kept up with the thing about wanting to be able to on demand move my feeling, and I have gotten better at it since then. So thank you for reminding me that that's where it all started. It actually did start with those mirror exercises.
Now, this next thing that he's going to say is like, interesting. He says faith is feeling. And then he quotes a scripture from Matthew. He says, according to your faith, and in parentheses, he says, feeling, be it unto you. So he is changing this a little bit. According to your faith, be it unto you. He says, according to your feeling, be it unto you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
And
faith. If you say that faith is feeling, if he's basically defining it that way, well,
right.
We just described feeling not in terms of emotion, but in terms of an excitement level or an enthusiasm. So if you understand it that way, now we're basically translating that faith is where you are enthusiastic. Faith is where you're turned on, where you're in that excited state. That's faith.
Yeah, and I like to always think about when, on occasion, talking to someone who I've been told on a number of occasions after I've coached someone that they have said to me, I feel like you've restored my hope, or I feel like my hope has been restored,
Right.
or I feel hopeful again, right? And I always like to think that when we're in that place where we feel hopeless, that's the place we need to get to, is where our hope is restored.
Mm-hmm.
But after our hope is restored, right? After we're not hopeless anymore, after we say, okay, my hope is restored, I've realized that this thing can happen, then we need to move from hope to faith. We have to get away from hoping, right? I hope it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much doubt in that statement, right?
There is.
It's not completely hopeless, but if I were to say, well, I hope we'll get married this year. I hope we'll get married on November 11th. There's not a lot of spirit going on in there, right? It's like, I need to move. I need to get to where I'm standing in faith. Because when I have faith, then I know it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's the same thing. If I have faith, something's going to happen, then I'm really holding that vision in the degree that I know it. It's a knowing. It's a confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm confident it's going to happen. And I'm certain. And so I think it's interesting because that's the way I always look at the word faith. He says that faith is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't disagree. He says you never attract that which you want, but always that which you are.
Mm-hmm.
As a man is, so does he see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
So that's that idea that we don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are.
I also want to...
We're all looking for
I want to
our
throw
own
some...
set of glasses.
Yeah, right. It's true. We do. It's true. I also want to throw another word out there. The word is zest. And the reason I pick zest, I'm tapping into this idea of his, faith is feeling, and translating it into faith is excitement level. Zest, in its most concrete form, is the peeling, the scrape peeling of an orange or a lemon or something like that. And it's added in cooking for the purpose of enhancing flavor, of making something more flavorful. So adding zest to your cooking adds flavor to your cooking. And we often use the word zest in terms of an enthusiasm or an excitement level of life. So, having ice cream adds zest to life, right? That's the idea behind zest. So I'm thinking now of faith in an entirely new way. He's equating faith to feeling, which is good. I think that's really good. I'm equating faith to zest. When you have zest, when life is flavorful and you're just eating it all up because it's just so good, it's just so tasty, and so enthusiastic about it right now, that is the ultimate faith because it's unshakable. It's concrete in a sense. It's 100% certainty. And that I think this is the first time I've ever felt I could actually get to faith in a 100% concrete way with just this one meaning. Because now that I understand, okay, zest, now I know what to go for. In the past, I was never really 100% sure what to go for. Now I know what to go for.
I love that metaphor because as somebody who does a lot of cooking or has in the past, I know what it is when you take a zester and you take the zest off a lime or a lemon.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it's such an amazing, the smell is so amazing, the scent of the citrus. Because what happens is as you drag that little tool to get the zest off, the oils and the fragrance from the fruit is in the air.
Right.
It's like a spritz, right? Not that you can even see it because it's like a mist, but you immediately can smell it.
Oh, it's pungent. It's really strong.
And I'm thinking of somebody texted us, "Love is in the air."
Yeah.
Right? It's like that you can almost, well, maybe not almost, like you know it. When someone has gotten into the spirit of something, you know it. Mm-hmm. You can sense it because they're certain, because they have a knowing. They're confident. And so the zest kind of winds up that whole word for me now. That's funny. All right.
Before you go on, I want to mention something. We have a comment from one of the people listening on the Facebook Law of Attraction Change My Life group. And forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm going to say it's Suraj. He says, sorry to disturb you, ma'am, so he's referring to you, Cindy, in your conversation, but faith is restored in our subconscious mind. In this case, we have to program our subconscious mind. If I'm wrong, then please correct me. I attend all your sessions, and it was a fantastic conversation about LOA and visualization. What do you think about that? Does it all happen in the subconscious mind?
Well, we've been reading in this particular book, in the first chapter, we got a good explanation of the subconscious being the part of our mind that actually does the creating. Mm-hmm. Right? So the seeds, so to speak, metaphorical seeds, the intentions that we make. And Neville is talking about as we're falling asleep is a really good time to do this. And I want to make sure to comment about that too, is that it doesn't mean the only time we can do this is as we're falling asleep. It just means it's a really important time to do it. But as we make intentions with our conscious mind, and in other words, we're making decisions about what it is we want, as we start tapping into the feeling of having that thing, that's when those seeds get planted in the subconscious. Mm-hmm. And the subconscious is what does the creating. So I would say that is correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I think we can also feel the faith consciously in that we have a knowing. Like we have faith that this thing is going to, we have faith that the thing is done. Mm-hmm. It's already so. As we capture the feeling of the state, we're relieved of all the effort to make it so because it's already so. That's faith right there. Mm-hmm. That is faith. And so is it in the subconscious? So, because I'm unclear, we could say that and say it in a way that we mean we don't know it's there, like we're unaware of it because it's subconscious. It's like buried underneath our conscious mind. But I think that we know it in the conscious mind. And yes, I think it's seated in the subconscious. It's what moves the subconscious to begin bringing the thing into, manifestation.
Yeah, I mean, Neville actually clarifies at one point, it may even have been this book, I can't remember which book it was, but he clarifies that the conscious and the subconscious minds are really part of the same thing. It's all just one mind, but it's useful for us to kind of distinguish between them just so that we can distinguish between what we're focusing on consciously and what is just kind of playing on a recorded tape, so to speak, in the background. That was stuff we focused on. It's all part of the mind, but we've got it going on like autopilot in the background. And so when I look,
and he also uses the metaphor of a man and a woman conceiving a child.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
Right. That, and we being a newlywed here, we talk about the marriage vows like two become one. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, so I'm my own person and he is his own person, but the two of us make a couple. We are one couple.
Right.
Like the subconscious and the conscious, they are one. Yes. Mm-hmm. And yet it's easier to speak about them as two.
Right.
This one does this and this one does that. But together, they're creating our reality. Mm-hmm. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. I think it did an admirable job. And thank you, Suraj, for contributing. We love it when people contribute. Yeah, we want to encourage more people to contribute. I mean, especially if you're listening to the live broadcast in the Facebook group, take advantage of the fact that you can comment because I'll try to keep an eye out and see if there are any other comments. I do that regularly. And when I see it, I'll bring it into the conversation.
So let's continue with where he's going here. He says, you never attract that which you want, but always that which you are. As a man is, so does he see. And then he quotes a New Testament scripture again. He says, to him that hath, it shall be given, and to him that hath not, it shall be taken away. Mm-hmm. He says, that which you feel yourself to be, you are. And you are given that which you are. So assume the feeling that would be yours where you're already in possession of your wish, and your wish must be realized. Interesting, that whole, to him that hath, it shall be given, to him that hath not, shall be taken away. Often in LA, when we start learning about law of attraction, we'll hear stories about that pertain to this exact thing. Pertain to our feeling and who we think we are. And a lot of the conversations are around financial abundance, right? We've all heard stories that many people that win the lottery lose it all in a short period of time. Mm-hmm. because it wasn't who they were. They weren't able to step into the identity of someone who was a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And so it vanished very quickly. The same idea with set points. Like if people have an idea about how much money it's okay to make, if that makes sense, right? Like somebody might have grown up in a home where, if you made X amount of money, that was fine. But if you made more than that, that put you over into the category of those rich people that are awful.
Right.
So it's like, and I've heard stories of people talk about that and say, they had a figure in their mind. Like they always thought, well, if I make this much money per year, that's good. That's not too much,
Right.
and it's not too little. But then they said things would happen in their life, like they would get a promotion, but then they'd lose the promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'd get a raise and they'd get a bonus, and then the car would break down and it would take the whole bonus. Or, it's like because they had this set point there. And so I think that's what he's talking about here, is that which you feel yourself to be, you are. So that's why this is so important, that we can feel what it is to have whatever that thing is. So it not only comes to us, but that we don't lose it right away.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big deal, that we have expectations. I mean, in this case, you're describing an expectation that also has a negative expectation associated with it of not, having too much money. So that kind of knocks you back down. But we also have other kinds of expectations, and the expectations are not necessarily conducive to our own happiness and health and wealth and so forth. So, for instance, we were talking about getting into a relationship. I had expectations when I was getting into my relationship with Louise that were scary. They were scary expectations because in my belief system at that time, relationships fall apart. Relationships, you get married, you end up getting divorced. You end up having fights and so forth. And it wasn't until Louise and I had been talking about it for a while that I realized it didn't have to be that way. But nevertheless, I still had all that old programming playing in the back of my head. So that was another reason, I think, for delaying asking her to marry me, because I needed to, among other things, root that stuff out and get it out of there. Because that could have just hung around for, years and undermined the relationship in all kinds of ways just because I expected it to. And I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad I actually took the time to get rid of it. It was a good move.
Very good move. Very good move.
Yeah. Oh, that could have gone really bad.
So in the next couple of paragraphs that wind up this chapter and wind up this book,
Mm-hmm.
Neville is going to start giving his version or his definition, his explanation of certain Bible verses. Those are the ones I was talking about. He says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Genesis 1:27. And then that's from the Jewish Bible, then from the Christian Bible, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. You are that which you believe yourself to be. Instead of believing in God or in Jesus, believe you are God or you are Jesus.
Mm.
He that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also. Should be, he that believes as I believe, the works that I do shall he do also. Jesus found it not strange to do the works of God, because he believed himself to be God. Now that's Neville talking.
That is Neville. Yep.
I and my Father are one. It is natural to do the works of the one you believe yourself to be. So live in the feeling of being the one you want to be, and that you shall be. When a man believes in the value of the advice given him and applies it, he establishes within himself the reality of success.
There are a few things in those last three paragraphs that jump out at me. The first one is in that first paragraph, or the third from the end, where he quotes Philippians saying, though it not thought it, let's do the whole thing. Let this mind be in you, which are also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. Thought it not robbery to be equal to God. That phrase, well, first of all, it's a rather interesting turn of phrase. But even more than that, it's one of the things I noticed while I was still involved in organized religion that a lot of devout Christians believe really is true. That, in a sense, they wouldn't have said it as robbery, but they would have argued that there's something wrong with you. And I know people to this day who would argue there's something wrong with your belief if you think that you're the equivalent of God. That if you think that you are...
That's one of the phrases that I said. Some people would say, this is heresy.
Oh, yeah. And yet the interesting thing is he quotes a Bible verse which actually declares the heresy. And that to me is the interesting part. To me, this is where there are some people who don't even pay attention to what their own books of faith tell them. Because their books of faith are actually telling them, hey, the way you're looking at this is actually counterproductive. The way you're looking at this is really not accurate. You need to kind of shift the way you're thinking about it, because the way you're thinking about it is God's up here and I'm down here. And this is very clearly saying, no, that's actually not the case. Stop thinking about it that way.
Yeah. So I love that he just says, well, Jesus found it not strange to do the works of God because he believed himself to God. Now, I will say this, is that there are a lot of people that will be divided on Neville's viewpoint there, saying, well, okay, Jesus thought he was God. And I can't even say that I agree with that. I don't know that Jesus thought he was God. But they would say, but I'm not, right? Because their belief says Jesus is God. So they would say, well, God is God, Jesus is God, but I'm not God. But we can go back, and if you want to, like you said, if you want to use your own book to set your mind at ease, he says, let this mind be in you. So Neville is saying, look, everything's going on in your mind, and you are able to create whatever you want.
Right.
You have that power. And he's likening it to, or saying it exactly is, the same power that God created the world with. So, I understand this is for someone that's listening that does have a strong religious belief, this may be really heavy.
It's confusing. Well, given what you're often taught in a typical church environment, that's a confusing thing, because on the one hand, you have what you're taught, and you have what's actually written in the Bible, and the two don't really align nicely. That's very much of a confusion-making process right there.
Well, what I always like to say about Neville is that I could take all of his explanations and all of his explanatory scriptures, and I could throw them all out, and I could still find the message that Neville's giving me on how to do this. Yeah,
it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's why I always feel like, okay, well, some people are going to be like wild about this because of the fact that Neville is quoting from the Bible, and some people are going to not even want to read it.
Right.
Which was me for a long time. It's like, oh, I can't deal with this, until I read it enough that I earned my Neville decoder ring.
That's right.
And now I realize that Neville's message of the way the mind is working and the way we can tap into our own mental powers actually is what I think we're talking about. And we can call it faith. We can call it many things, but the method is there, and it's there whether you want to wrap it up in religious sounding words or not. It's there.
It is.
So and that's always my message, because I realize I think this Neville stuff is so valuable to the conscious creator that I don't want people to be dissuaded to read it because it's got kind of religious wrappings in it sometimes.
I understand.
And then there's the other side of people. It may be actually a real turn on for some people. It's like, oh yes, this is awesome. Because I know these words and they mean something to me. Now, then there's always the idea that they might not mean what you want them to mean, or his version may be a lot different than your version of the explanation. So, wait, that's all that means. But I just think I think it's a good exercise in thinking for yourself.
It really is. No, I agree totally, and that's actually where I come from. I'm very much like you, and you know that. I first resisted Neville because I saw the Bible verses, and I just wasn't even interested in delving into it because I don't have to deal with Bible verses. I left all that behind when I was a teenager. I'd done all that stuff. I'd read the Bible cover to cover. I'd realized where the strengths and weaknesses were, and I was done with that. But then after talking with you about Neville, and I can't remember which book we did first. Well, actually, we did that one episode last spring, I think it was, where you just kind of gave me the overview surrounding the thought, assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And when I heard that, it opened my mind up just enough that I was willing to at least look at the Bible verses. And then after that, you kind of introduced me to the Neville decoder ring, and replacing words with other words that made more sense. And now all of a sudden, I could handle the Bible verses. In fact, now I was kind of interested to see, could I figure out for myself, okay, this Bible verse, I can tell the way I normally understand it doesn't resonate right, but are there word substitutions that I can do in order to make sense out of it? And as I've begun to do that, I think that's kind of what you were describing that you went through, having reread the stuff over and over again. As you learn to do the word substitutions, it takes on a whole new meaning. And when it takes on the whole new meaning, now all of a sudden, I find I can accept it in a way I couldn't accept it before.
Right, exactly. And so I would encourage anyone reading Neville to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is to be very open to the idea that he's using metaphor.
Mm-hmm. He is. He's using metaphor. And I love the fact that, I look at some of the substitutions we came up with today. Faith is feeling. And when I do some of the word substitutions, what it comes out to is faith is having a zest for life. Faith is enthusiasm. And that I can buy into. That's probably the best statement of what faith is of anything I've ever heard in my life. Faith is zest. And when I look at it that way, it makes... No... Shoot. I always had trouble with the word faith. Even after exploring the law of attraction for the first time, I had trouble with it. And now all of a sudden, okay. Faith actually has a much better meaning to me now than it did an hour ago even. Just because we've got that substitution.
And was that because of the connection to religion?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. But it was more than that because, it was sort of indirectly. Because for me, the way faith had been taught to me through the Christian religion. And I had experienced what faith didn't do for me. What they had taught me their understanding of faith. I had bought into their understanding of faith, and the results weren't there. It was kind of like being exposed to the law of attraction. When I was exposed to the religion, I was supposed to have X results, and X results weren't. I could tell I wasn't even close to X results. They just weren't even there. And that's when the whole faith thing started to fall apart for me. Well, because I had that association of the word faith, now all of a sudden I was applying it everywhere. It's like, well, faith never works. Faith is always a waste of time. Faith is always, you're going to have broken promises streaming in your pathway. That's what it felt like. So, yeah, did religion affect my idea of faith? Oh, yeah, just a little bit.
So we can always recognize that we can swap the word out. Mm-hmm. Neville did it today with the word feeling.
Right.
Faith is feeling.
Yeah.
And I like also the word confidence, the word certainty.
Mm-hmm.
If we're certain, and we can do that, we can claim that certainty about things by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
Because as long as we keep going, as long as we continue to feel that feeling with spirit behind it, like you were saying, with zest. As long as we can continue that thing will harden into fact.
Mm.
And somewhere along the line, I think, if I have to make linear time, I will say before it hardens into fact, it has to become faith.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be certain. And you can't really drum that up. You just suddenly know. Mm-hmm. Right? There is actually a Bible verse that says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Oh, yes.
The evidence of things not seen. We don't always see it, but we feel it.
Mm-hmm.
We see it in our mind's eye.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
That's it.
It makes a lot more sense.
It's a done deal at that point.
Yep. We're at the end of the hour. I want to make sure I get the messages in very quickly. If you're not a subscriber, become a subscriber. The instructions on how to do it are in most of the descriptions where you can see this particular post, this particular episode. If you don't see anything about how to do the subscription, just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday-net. You'll have links right there that you can click. And when you become a subscriber, and for those who are already subscribers, please share the fact on social media that you're listening to loatoday.net. And I'm not sure where we're going to go this afternoon. I think we'll pick out another Neville book, but I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion, because even though we're done with one book, Neville is an ongoing discussion, right?
Right, exactly.
It's never ending. So definitely, we're looking forward to that. We hope that you'll join us this afternoon and every time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
The broadcast of Facebook Live has stopped. Recording has stopped.
Whoops, I forgot to turn this one off. Hold on.